Daniel Sports Central, we go over a college football game preview and prediction on the Week 6 matchup between the Texas Longhorns and the Oklahoma Sooners. Huge matchup for both these teams coming up here in Week 6. You got Texas, who is 3-2 heading into this matchup, but both losses that they've had this season have come within 3 points. So this is still a Longhorn team with tremendous potential, and they're taking on an Oklahoma team that is in desperate need of a win right now. Oklahoma's 3-2, and they've taken 2 straight losses. They lost to K-State a couple of weeks ago, which was a close but obviously disappointing loss. And then they go to TCU last week and get blown out by TCU. Definitely, it's been a rough past couple of weeks for Oklahoma, so this is a big opportunity to get back on the right track for the Sooners. But either way, huge matchup for both these teams. We'll be going over a full game preview and prediction on this matchup here today, starting out with their team trends. Texas beat West Virginia 38-20 in their Week 5 matchup. So a solid win there for Texas, beating West Virginia, who is probably one of the worst teams in the Big 12 for sure. They're 2-3 on the season. Still nonetheless a good win for Texas, and they're 3-2. Oklahoma lost to TCU 24-55. I don't think anyone saw that coming out of Oklahoma, going on the road to TCU and taking a loss like that. TCU just dominated Oklahoma from the start, and the Sooners couldn't get back in it. Plus, obviously, Dillon Gabriel got injured during that game, which made it even tougher. So Oklahoma, this is a team that after the Nebraska game in Week 3, they were looking like a top 4, top 5 team in the country. And suddenly the Sooners are out of the top 25, and it looks, that Nebraska game seems like a distant memory at this point. So, this is obviously a crucial game for Oklahoma. You don't want to be at 3-3 because that basically eliminates any chances that you have of winning a Big 12 title. And, national hopes are almost out the window for both these teams now, but the Big 12 title is still within reach for both these teams, that is for sure, especially considering how wide open the Big 12 is right now. Game's on Saturday, October 8th in Dallas, Texas, so obviously the rivalry matchup, it is in a neutral location, and your kickoff is 11 a.m. Central. Spread's going Texas here by 7, so Longhorns are favored by a decent amount for this one according to the spread, over under 65. And the FPI is going Texas, 68.2%. Series history, Texas leads at 62-50, but OU has won 4 straight against Texas. That's something to keep in mind here, is that Oklahoma has won 4 straight. They've had plenty of success in recent history against Texas, and they also lead the past 10 by a score of 7-3. They've won 7 out of the past 10. So in recent history, Oklahoma's had more success, but in the long term, Texas has beaten Oklahoma 12 more times. Here's your stat comparison for this one. Texas 20th in points per game this season. These are out of 131 FBS teams. You can see where both teams are strongest and also where their weak spots are. And so Texas, honestly, both sides of the ball are pretty strong. 20th in points per game, 28th in points allowed. They are 42nd in passers a game, 60th in rush yards, and then for yards allowed, 77th in passing, 39th in rushing. As for Oklahoma, 19th in points per game, 56th in points allowed, 45th in passers game, 13th in rush yards, and for yards allowed, 60th in passing, 111th in rushing. So rushing defense is a big weak spot statistically so far this season for the Sooners. And for Texas, honestly, they're balanced on both sides of the ball. Oklahoma's been slightly better on offense than defense, which makes sense. Oklahoma's usually a really good offensive team. But obviously not having Dillon Gabriel. We'll see how that progresses. That's obviously a huge factor in this game, is whether or not Dillon Gabriel plays. For Texas with Quinn Ewers, you got Hudson Card, who's actually a pretty good quarterback from what we've seen so far. So I'm not as concerned about the Texas quarterback situation, but I definitely am about Oklahoma's, because without Dillon Gabriel, this team really doesn't have much of a reliable second option. They got Davis Baville, who is the Pitt transfer quarterback. He played behind Kenny Pickett last year. Really doesn't have much experience in comparison to Hudson Card, who has some, and he's shown his potential already. I definitely am more concerned about the Oklahoma quarterback situation. But nonetheless, statistically, Texas, good on both sides of the ball. Oklahoma has been better on offense, but defensively, they can definitely be better. Your recent matchups, Texas beat West Virginia 38-20. Of course, lost to Texas Tech in overtime, 34-37. And Texas Tech turns out to be a decent football team this season. They're obviously, Texas Tech has been up and down, but nonetheless, that was a tough loss for Texas. They beat UTSA 41-20, lost to Alabama by 1. That's still a very notable game on their schedule, keeping the Crimson tied within 1 point, almost beating them in the end, but obviously did lose the game, and they beat Louisiana Monroe 52-10. As for Oklahoma, lost to TCU 24-55, lost to K-State 34-41, beat Nebraska 49-14, beat Kent State 33-3, and beat UTEP 35-13. So the first 3 games, Oklahoma looked so good, and once again, this team, they had every right to be in the top 5, top 6, or in the conversation for that after the first 3 weeks of action. But yeah, things have really turned in the past 2 weeks, that's for sure. And the Sooners definitely need to turn it back before it keeps getting worse. Your key points for this one: Texas, they got potential. They've definitely got a higher ceiling right now. If you compare them with Oklahoma, I'd say the Longhorns have kept, their 2 losses are extremely close. Once again, they kept it within 1 against Alabama and lost to Texas Tech in a brutal overtime game. So, Texas, this is a team that's definitely talented this season, and they're definitely worthy of potentially being at the top of the Big 12 once the regular season is said and done. Quinn Ewers looks to return for this matchup as well, and that is, he's still questionable. We don't know for sure if he's going to return. That is going to be something that we find out as the week progresses, but as it sounds right now, Quinn Ewers will be playing in this game. So, that'll be good for Texas to have him back. And Longhorns, overall a strong team in the Big 12, as I mentioned before. It is wide open heading into the middle parts of this season. You got 8 teams that I could see winning the conference. You got K-State, who is looking pretty good. They're especially playing well right now. Kansas is still undefeated. You got Oklahoma State, who's still undefeated. TCU coming off of their huge win against Oklahoma. Texas Tech hasn't looked bad. Baylor's disappointed a little bit, but they're still in contention. Texas is a good team. Oklahoma's a good team. There are 8 teams that I could still see winning the conference this season. It is, once again, as wide open as it's been. And as for Oklahoma, defensively, got to be better, obviously. Dillon Gabriel's status is uncertain. That is obviously something to keep an eye on if he plays for this matchup and is back to close to 100%. I do think Oklahoma's got a good chance here. But obviously the quarterback situation is a key factor here for the Sooners in this matchup. And this is, once again, a crucial game for Oklahoma. This is a team that started out the season 3-0, off to a great start, ranked into the top 10. And suddenly Oklahoma taking 2 straight losses, disappointing losses. And that seems like, once again, a distant memory. So, this is a huge game for the Sooners to turn things around, and obviously a huge game for Texas, who is a team that I still think has got tremendous potential to make a run for the Big 12. But that said, let's get to the prediction here for Texas and Oklahoma, the 2022 edition of the Red River Rivalry. And in this matchup, I'm going Texas. 38-27 is my predicted final score. I think Texas is simply the better team right now in this matchup, especially with Oklahoma. The injuries, the way Oklahoma's playing right now, they were just flat against TCU. And who knows? Venables is he's an outstanding coach, and he could turn this team around and get them to play really well in this game. And I could see Oklahoma definitely winning this one, but especially if Dillon Gabriel is out, which seems like a very real possibility for this matchup. I just don't have confidence in Davis Bavile to be able to lead this team against Texas, who's a talented team, and they've played fairly well so far this season and win. So I think Texas, I'm more comfortable picking with the Longhorns in this matchup. I'll say 55% towards Texas. Over under 65. I'll take the over for this one, and Texas to cover the spread in the end, which is currently 7 points towards Texas. And so this is usually a very high-scoring matchup. That's how it's been in years past, especially the past few years. So I do expect to see the over, even though the over-under is at 65. But yeah, once again, it's definitely it's an intriguing matchup, definitely a very notable matchup for it being between 2 unranked teams, because both teams are still very capable of being big contenders in the Big 12 this season. But that said, let me know your thoughts in the comments below on this matchup, and I appreciate you guys watching as always. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central. Catch you on the next one.